Hi, this is JP Morgan. Today on the Slider Lens, we're going to take a look at how to set up a 3-camera interview with minimal crew. I'm going to talk about the basics that give you a good foundation to set up a 3-camera interview, how to set the cameras up, how to light it, what sound you should do, and then last of all, the interview process itself. That's almost the hardest part, being able to ask the questions and know how to pull that off. If you have one other person helping you, that really makes this possible. It's very difficult with just one person, but 2 people can do a 3-camera interview and pull it off with electronic sliders. We've got edelkrone sliders here, and those sliders are going to go into a parallax move, so it gives us dynamic cameras on the the B and C camera, which gives us a great look with our locked off A camera. So let's get started, let's break this down, let's get to each one of those places and get going here. So first off, let's talk about the cameras, how to set the cameras up. First camera, A camera. With the A camera, I'm going to want to be a little wide because I want this to be contextual. I want them to see the factory in the background with my 2 subjects in the foreground. I'm going to set them up in the middle so they can turn and look towards each other. I'm then going to stand off to the left of the camera as I look at them as I do the interview. But in this process, I'm about 24 millimeters because on this Super 35, that's giving me almost a 35 to 40 millimeter, but I see all of the factory in the background and I like that context. I'm not too shallow depth of field, I'm about 3.5 because I want to see some of the context in the background. A lot of times on this camera, I'm going to want to be on 100 millimeters and I'm going to want to be at 2.8 and let that background just go away. If there's nothing interesting to see back there, that's a decision I would make. But in this situation, it's SKB, the owners of SKB. I want to see the factory where they're making cases and have that in the background, so I'm going with a little more depth of field and a little broader lens to be able to see it in context. For our first B camera, it's a slider on the camera right-hand side. It's made to look and dirty the frame with the interviewee on my side, and it's looking kind of over his shoulder to the person on the other side. So it's crossing, the camera angle is crossing. In that, I've got a 100 millimeter lens on the EOS R. The target tracking is also taking care of the focusing for us, so it's going to keep us focused. It's going to give that distance from our subject matter and keep our subject in focus as the slider goes back and forth. There's not a lot of movement here, so it's just going to be a slight change in the focus as it goes back and forth on that slider. So the head one is fabulous because you just come to position 1, you point this to where you want. You got a 3-axis move here. You can go slide up, you go up, down, slide across. You got the slider, you got tilting and panning. You got everything in that head one. Just go to where you want. Position 1, hit position 1, move to the second position, and where you set the second, hit it, and it'll just go back and forth. When you push both of those at the same time, it's just going to go back and forth. This is a C camera. This is giving me cross coverage. This is looking across the other person who I'm interviewing, dirtying the frame with his shoulder, and now I've got a nice look at each person's got their camera view. One from the right-hand side, looking across, one from the left-hand side, looking across. Those 2 are going to dirty the frame with each other and become excellent B cameras and C camera. This is the SliderONE from edelkrone with the head one. This is a very simple setup, a very small, lightweight, easy to carry setup because it's just so compact. But it's just going to parallax on our subject matter. We're going to pick our A position, our B position, just have the camera slide back and forth. Both of these sliders give us the ability to feather in and out of the stop. So it kind of slowly comes to a stop, rests, and slowly starts up again and goes back. So once we've started both of these going, we don't need anyone to operate them. Now I can be on the A camera and off we go. For sound, we're going to have 2 sources. First, lavs on each of our interviewees. Those 2 lavs are wireless lavs. We're going to go back to the C200. We're going to lay those right back to the clip. But then we're going to add a shotgun mic. We're going to put that right between our 2 interviewees and aim it towards their chests, and it will give us good audio from both of them. Now, the lavs are more present, more higher end as far as tone. You get more of the high-end treble and not so much bass. Whereas with the shotgun mic, it's more bass and more room tone. When you mix those 2 together on a timeline to give you in the edit, to give you a little bit of a mix of those 2 sound sources, they start to sound really wonderful together. And it gives you the ability to choose one or the other, more of one, less of the other, and you can decide what you like best in the edit. It also is an excellent backup sound source in case one of them isn't working. You now got a second sound source, which is always a good idea when you're doing an interview. Let's talk about the lighting setup here. It's hard because we've got 2 garage doors here. We could have closed them, but it just became very complicated. We got overhead lights, a lot of things going on, so the floor was very high already. But in order to augment that, and most of the time when you're shooting interviews, you do have to augment the light that's already there. So we're going to let those light sources live, but then to add to it, we're going to do a double back key rim and then a fill from the front. So if you look at this way it's set up, I've got a rim light right here That rim light is going to rim this person, but it's going to key this person. So as he turns in to look to his partner as he talks, it's going to key him, but it's rimming his partner's head from behind. Now the opposite on the other side, if I stand here, I've got a rim key on this side. It's going to give me a nice rim light on the interviewee here, but it's going to give me a nice key light on my face. None of this works because it's all from behind unless you do something to open up the background or open up the fill light in the front. And so we did a large box here. Love this box by Aperture. And this is going to be a kind of a key from the front because we moved it over to the side. It was by the garage door that was just spilling in so much light already. We just cleaned it up a little bit with this from the camera left side. Then we brought a little bit of a fill card in to open up the two of them and look fabulous because we had so much floor here. Now for a director's point of view in this experience, there's several things you need to know as you set this up. This is not so unlike if you're doing a one-person, one-camera shoot to a 2 or 3 camera shoot. But the first thing is get close to the camera as you ask your questions. Most directors don't have, anytime you're doing a doc-style interview, the people look into the lens. It just feels a little uncomfortable. They're really addressing the audience. It's more conversational if you have the person look at you just off from the camera. Make sure you get yourself something to sit on because you're going to be sitting here for a while and you don't want to be shifting around. So sit on a box, sit on a chair, get yourself at exactly the camera lens height, but be able to sit there comfortably for the entire length of the interview. So get yourself a place to sit down. Make sure you write your questions down ahead of time. Know who you're going to interview and then write down some questions that are going to make sense to them and to what you want to get out of the interview. If you just walk in cold turkey and start asking questions, you're on a wild goose chase. But if you write down a series of questions, you can go through them, make sure you're getting each of the answers that you need. Sometimes they're going to answer 2 or 3 of your questions. You don't have to ask that question, but just give yourself a roadmap and be able to get the interview that you want. It's really important to have questions you've thought about ahead of time. Make sure that as you talk to them, as you ask them a question, like where were you born, they don't say Cincinnati. There's nowhere to go with that. They have to hear your question to understand what the answer is. So you tell your interviewee, as I'm asking you a question, I want you to repeat back my question in your answer. Try not to ask closed-in questions like, where are you from? Did you enjoy going there? Yes or no? It's going to kill you every time. But if you say, what was it that happened in that experience that was so interesting to you? That's much different than, did you enjoy going there? As you're interviewing someone, listen to the things that they say. Today I was talking to the SKB guys, they're going, you know what, the first case we ever made was a saxophone case. Well, I'm going, okay, I need to make a note of that, saxophone case. And when we were done shooting, I said, do you still have that saxophone case? They said, well, yeah, I got it in my office, the very first case we ever made. I'm going, I want a B-roll shot of you holding that case. A good interview will be probably about 30% interview and probably about 70% B-roll. Let the conversation become kind of organic. You'll ask them a question, it kind of leads you to another question. As you ask a question of your interviewee, if you get the response you want, great. But if you don't get exactly what you want, then just go back and ask the question again a little later. You can come back to the same questions and ask them again. They'll start to get the point that you're trying to get something from them, or they may not even notice. Some people don't even notice. Just go back and ask the same questions again. It's going to give you another take on the same thought. Last of all, I let people ramble a little bit. I find that they ramble for a while and then some new thing happens, and I'm okay with that. It means that you've got to cut a lot of stuff out in the editing process, but you get some pretty interesting kind of fresh, real moments if you let people ramble a little bit. You're not always cutting them off and going to the next thing. They start to feel like you're impatient with them and you have your own agenda about how this has to go versus they get to share their story with you and it's kind of on their time and their pace. So there you go, how to set up a 3-camera interview with automated sliders so you can do it with a small crew. So let's take a look at just a little bit of this interview and how it came together.
Unfortunately, I have a very short attention span, and one day in 1977, August 3rd, I was running the vacuum former that we'd made with these heating rods out of the dishwasher, and I started thinking about something else. Doug started talking to me. I walked out of the pig hole up into his office, forgetting that I'd been running this machine, and then I came back. I saw Dave out there slaving away, sanding on molds, and he goes, "What the hell, Steve?" And I looked, there's a big cloud of smoke coming out of the pig hole. So somebody had seen the fire, and they gave me a fire extinguisher that was the size of a 16-ounce beer can. And I went running in there like I was going to be the big hero and put the fire out. And so I ran up to the fire, the vacuum former's ablaze, and I shot it with this little miniature fire extinguisher. All it did was took everything that was burning and run it up the side of the wall, went up the ceiling, and then all dropped on top of me. And Dave recalls that all he remembers was hearing a big scream. He fortunately had a garden hose right outside the door.
Okay, I dragged him out of the building and threw him on the ground and put him out with the garden hose. That's the way it happened. And I drove him to the hospital.
Right.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got enough information out of this to be able to get out there and to set up your own interviews and to practice and to play with that experience. Thanks to edelkrone that make great motion equipment that allow your sliders to move and to automate. They also do great time lapse. We use them all the time. We really love our edelkrone equipment here at the Slanted Lens. Post some to our Facebook group. We'd love to see what you're doing. We also have a download you can purchase. It's really how to go from still photographer to videographer. Great information there. It'll help you get more information on what we talked about, more on sound, more on the things you need to know to be able to make that transition from photographer to videographer. So I hope you enjoyed this information. Follow us, like us, do all those things. Keep those cameras rolling and keep on clicking.